Hey guys! So today we're going to be introducing a new concept, and you'll see it popping up throughout your math lifetime. And it's the LCM, or it actually stands for least common multiple. So normally it's written as LCM. So in sign language, this is how you would sign it. So it's important for you to understand the LCM because it's a fundamental structure of math that you'll need. And so the reason that we need the LCM is because it's when you have two fractions that have a different denominator, you have to figure out a way to make them equal in order to multiply or divide the fraction. Normally, it'll involve making the fraction bigger. And it's a long process if you don't use the LCM method. You want to keep the number as small as possible in the denominator, and I'll explain that a little bit more as we continue this lesson. For example, let's think about the number 6. 6 times 1 equals 6. 6 times 2 is 12. Let's look at this on the paper. Hang on. So the multiples of 6 are 6, 12, and 18. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5, 30. So those are all multiples of 6. You see the list is 6 being multiplied by numbers 1 through 5. So let's go to the next example. So we have a few different numbers, and we'll need to find the LCM of those numbers. So let me show you two different ways. We're going to start with the first way. So the first way is having the two different numbers. We'll have to list out the multiples of these 8 and 6 until we find the number that's common for both of those. They're common multiple. However, we want the number to be the least amount, hence the least common multiple. So we'll start with 8 times 2 because 8 times 1 is higher than 6. So 8 times 2 is 16, times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32. All right. So I think for now we can start moving over to the 6th column. So we'll start with 6 times 2, which is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. So now you can see that they both have the common number of 24. So that's going to be the least common multiple, or the LCM. So you notice that it's 8 times 3 is 24, but 6 times 4 is 24. So you'll have to multiply the fractions by two different numbers in order to have them have the same denominator of 24. So let's say that the fraction is 1/8. Oh wait, hold on. Let me write this down. So 1/8 plus 1/6. So now I'm going to apply this example that I've shown you of multiplying 8 times 3 and 6 by 4. So you'll have to multiply both the numerator and the denominator. So your new fractions will be 3 over 24 plus 1 times 4 and 6 times 4. the other new fraction will be 4 over 24. So now you can add and get 7 over 24. So that's how you make a common denominator using the LCM of 24. Okay, so I hope that everything's clear so far. So now I'm going to give you the opportunity to figure out the LCM of 7 and 3. So pause the video and write down your answers and see if they match mine. We see that the LCM is 21. Okay, so that's for the example of 7 and 3. You see that 7 goes from 14 to 21, 28, but 3 has to go all the way from 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 before they get to a least common multiple. Okay, so now we're going to do a different way of finding the LCM. We're going to apply a factor, or a tree factor. So we have 12 and 14. So 12, 24, 36, 48, 14. Okay, so it's kind of hard when you have bigger numbers. So we're going to do this factoring method. So what you'll start with is draw your line, separating them, and it's going to look kind of like a tree. So 12, what are things that multiply to make 12? We're going to do 6 and 2. So 6 times 2 equals 12. So we're going to break down 6 even more. What multiplies to make 6? 3 and 2. Okay? So the factor is 3, 2, and 2. So for 14, we'll do 7 and 2. So now we need to find the LCM. But how do we do that? So what you do is you look for the numbers that they have in common. So both 12 and 14 have a factor of 2. So I know that 12 has 2 2's, but you'll just need 1. So now looking at the different multiples of a factor of 12, so 3 and 2 and 2, and then 7 and 2, the 2's cancel each other out. So now we're left with 2 times 3 times 2 times 7. And I'm drawing some arrows so you can see where the numbers are. So now you're going to go ahead and multiply all those numbers together. 2 times 3 equals 6, times 2 equals 12, times 7. Hold on, let me write this out. 12 times 7 is 84, which is your final answer. So that's going to be the LCM of 12 and 14. Instead of having to write down all the LCMs of 12 and 14 until you found that their common one was 84, you can use this factoring method. And if anytime you have where there are two factors that are the same, they just become 1. So now we're going to try using the different methods to figure out the LCM for these number groups. So you can pause the video and figure out these, and then we'll see if your answers match mine. So we have 5 and 2. We can use the listing method instead of the factoring method for this because they're pretty small numbers. So 10, 15, and 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, so we can stop now. So our LCM is 10 for 5 and 2. Or if you wanted to use the factoring method for these numbers, you definitely could. You would get the same answer because 5 and 2 both are the smallest factor that they could be. So we'll move on to the next one now. So 6 and 4. We're going to also use the listing method for this one. 6 times 2 is 12, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12. So we've already found our LCM. It's 12. Okay, so again, if you wanted to use the factoring method, you could, because 6 factors into 3 and 2, and 4 factors into 2 and 2. So the 2 from the 6 and the 2 from the 4 cancel each other out. So it'll be equals to 3 times 2, which 3 times 2 times 2, which is 12. So let's move on to the next one. We have 12 and 20. So these are higher numbers, so we're going to use the factoring method. So we'll do 6 times 2, and then let's move over to 20 and do 10 times 2. So the 10 can factor smaller into 5 times 2, and the 6 from the 12 can factor smaller into 3 times 2. Okay, so we see the factors of 12 are 3, 2, and 2, and the factors of 20 are 5, 2, and 2. We see that there are some common numbers on both sides, so those can cancel into 1. Instead of writing 2 twice, you'll just write it once. And then we also see that there's another set of 2, so instead of writing 2 4 times, we're only going to write it twice. And then we'll write down our other numbers. We have a 3 and a 5. Now we'll multiply all these numbers together. You can see in the arrows that I'm drawing where the numbers are going. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. And 12 times 5 is 60. Whoa! My computer just messed up, but it's okay. So the LCM of 12 and 20 is 60. Instead of having to write out each one of those LCM multiples until we found that 60 was the least common multiple, we can just use this factoring method. So for our last one, 8 and 10, we're also going to use the factoring method. So 8 has multiples of 4 and 2, and the 4 can lower itself down to 2 and 2. 10 is 5 and 2 again. So we have a common one between those of one set of 2's. So instead of writing 2 twice, you'll write it once. So we'll have 2 times another 2 from the 8, and another 2 from the 8, and then the 5 from the 10. So multiply 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 5 is 40. So our least common multiple is 40. So if you were to list out 8 and 10, all their different multiples, you would finally find that their least common multiple is 40. But sometimes it's easier to use the factoring method. So we'll practice this a little bit more in class, and if it's challenging for you or anything, just let me know. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this lesson. Have a good day.